say is the fair expectations for the Dallas Cowboys heading into the 2024 NFL season?
So I agree with everything you said. I mean, obviously the playoffs never goes well. Which someone who is there at the facility every single day and seeing them practice, seeing them working out, and then going to the games always blows my mind. And especially because 2023 was the season where I thought if anything was possible, it was possible last year, because they were so good on paper and they were so good in everything that they were doing. I mean, we had a good record. We were winning games. We entered the playoffs on a high. So I'm thinking, I didn't go to the stadium that day and expecting to be the last time I was going to be in the stadium for the year, or possibly ever, because you never know at the end of the season what's going to happen if you're going to, move up or move teams or whatever. So I'm like, none of us were mentally prepared. None of the media was mentally prepared for that. And I think for the 2024 season, they're going to have to live up to how good they were in 2023, but also have to hold that chip on their shoulder that they let it all go to, like you said, a Green Bay Packers team that was supposed to be rebuilding. And then they came in, at home in Dallas and destroyed them on their own turf, which is just embarrassing in a sense. So I think with everyone getting paid, I think that it shows that Jerry Jones respects them enough and believes in them enough to pay them. So I think it's now in the players' hands to get the job done.
The podcast where the mic drops happen. This is the SHAE Max Show.
Okay. Let's go. Get ready, let's go. They can't stop you. No, they can't stop you. No, they can't stop you. They can't stop you. No, they can't stop you. Don't let them stop you. Back against the wall, beat.
Alrighty, and welcome to the SHAE Max Show with your fellow host SHAE, and I am kicking off this episode with my very special guest, Miss Brittany Bowen from D210 Sports. D, how are you doing on this day?
Hi, how are you?
I'm just happy to be here.
Amen.
It's just been, I don't know. This week, I just call it honestly just an off week. I mean, it's just been off all the way. But obviously, we brought you on the show because you are what some people would know, but many needs to know, is that you work for D10 Sports, and you cover not only the Dallas Mavericks, who just got finished with an epic, NBA season, even though the finals did not turn out the way that they wanted, but you also cover our fellow Dallas Cowboys for the same exact network. So before we get started on all of that and get, into the Cowboys, let's introduce you more to the audience. So your background in sports, obviously you love it. But how did it get started? How did it get started for you? What was the moment where you got your big break into this?
Okay, so basically, I played sports my whole life. So sports has just always been a thing for me. I have two little sisters. We were all like big time athletes, and I knew I wanted to work in sports at a really, really young age. I just wasn't sure like what route I was going to take. My sister went like the medical route, and then I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna do the reporter route. So my big break in the very, very beginning was when I want to say it was in 2019. It was right before COVID. I drove 9 hours to a sports job fair, and I just prayed, and I was like, I don't know where like life is taking me, where God is taking me. I had just graduated from college. I was like scared. And so I went to this job fair, and I met with some people there that really liked my look. They liked my voice. So I actually got hired after multiple months of interviewing with the MLB. Unfortunately, that was short-lived because of COVID, so I only worked with them for 6 months, and then I got let go from them because of COVID. It was actually the Minnesota Twins was who I worked for, and then because of that, it's kind of like, when one door closes and another door opens, and I think everything happens for a reason. And by the grace of God, having a professional sports team on my resume like the MLB opened a lot of doors for me after COVID ended and people started rehiring, because it just showed that I had worked with a professional sports team. So then D210 hired me on after COVID kind of ish ended in November of 2020, and I originally was hired on to cover D1 football and basketball. I was covering the TCU Horned Frogs. And I was going to Fort Worth all the time, and then slowly but surely I just worked my way up, and then I started covering the Mavs after about a year because our reporter headed off to ESPN, and then the current Cowboys reporter after 2 years headed off to Tampa, and now she works for the Bucks. So I just kind of like slowly waited my turn and worked my way up, and then I've been covering the Cowboys. This will be my 3rd season, and then the Mavericks. I just finished my 4th season, 3.5, because I kind of came in halfway through the first time. So
yeah, well, in advance, congratulations, even though you don't need it at this point. And I don't think a lot of people understand how hard it really was during, the pandemic. Obviously, I graduated college during the pandemic, so I'm a pandemic graduate.
Okay.
I got my degree from Rutgers University, but that was the hardest adjustment I have ever had to make as a student in my entire life. And then you gotta go into an industry or work your way into an industry where it's so hard to get into already as it was when everything was out in the open, and then now you gotta compete with thousands and millions of others, and it ain't just in the US, but it's worldwide, because you got a lot of people who will be willing to move to another country to work jobs like this. That's how important it is. So the fact that you did, the fact that, even though you had your setbacks, but obviously you had a major comeback. You're now 4 years into covering the Mavericks, and I think that is an exceptional job that you're doing with D10, correct me. And I think you're doing a great job with the Cowboys, and that's why I brought you up here on this show.
Thank you. I really appreciate that so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when did you graduate? Because, so you said you graduated during COVID.
2021.
Okay, 2021. Okay, yeah, my sister did the same thing. I luckily graduated in 2019, so I was like not I graduated in 2018, Lord. And I didn't have to go through that during COVID, but you are correct. Like finding a job post-COVID was extremely hard. I mean, and especially people for me and you who like work in sports. I mean, I was calling my parents being like, am I going to have to find a new profession? Because like we weren't even sure if fans were going to come back. Like everything was so questionable. And so I think like for everyone involved in the sports industry, that was like such a scary time. And I would never want to go back to that. But we made it. We made it through. Everyone seems to be doing better now. So that's all that matters. But yeah, it was a scary time. But like I said, I think that like everything happens for a reason, and like one door closing with the MLB just opened me to another door in Dallas, and I never thought I would ever live in Dallas. I had never lived in Texas or even set foot in Texas before I moved there. But it all worked out for the better. So
yeah, and Dallas is a pretty beautiful city to live in, and it's a pretty big one too.
It's really it's a top 10 market too. So it's like I really had no complaints. My dad was like, how did you get, like, your first job was with the MLB, and I was actually in South Florida, even though it was with the Minnesota Twins, because they put me at the spring training facility. So my dad's like, you're living in South Florida in, like, paradise, and then you go from there to Dallas, Texas, which is, like, a top 10 market, and I'm like, look, by the grace of God, that's all I got to say, because it could have been so much worse.
Yeah, it really could have been, and people, and I just don't know, like, I'm 25, and I still don't know. But
I think we're all on the same page a little bit.
Just a little bit. But hey, you're there. I'm still working there. But we made it. We made it. So speaking of Dallas, we have to get started on your fellow Cowboys.
Okay.
Because obviously the playoffs last year, or for the past 25 years, you can say
multiple years.
Yeah, just does not, and many people like Stephen A. here does not swing and miss on this when they say that the playoffs just do not play out well for the Cowboys and
Correct.
does not go by their expectations or the way that they hoped that it would go.
Correct.
So the way 2023 season ended, obviously bad loss to the Green Bay Packers,
Correct.
being led by Jordan Love, and this is like a year or two post Aaron Rodgers where they were supposed to go into dark stages. Clearly not going to happen there. But 2023 didn't end well. Obviously, you came into this year with a top 5, top 10 defense being led by Micah Parsons and Trevon Diggs and many others like that. So, but then you just got Dak Prescott, who signed the massive contract deal, which we're going to get into next. And then you got Zeke back. If I'm not mistaken, Tony Pollard's still there. And
he actually went to Nashville.
He went to Nashville. Okay, yeah. There we go.
You're good. He went to Nashville off season. He was a free agent, so Nashville picked him up, and then we got Zeke back.
Yeah, Zeke back. See, that's why I got you up here.
You're good.
That's why I got you up here. So Tony Pollard departed. Zeke came back. Made his return back to Dallas for a year, and then now you have CeeDee Lamb, who just got a massive contract deal.
Correct.
So with all these guys getting paid their money, all these guys being ranked in their positions where they are for obvious reasons, what would you say is the fair expectations for the Dallas Cowboys heading into the 2024 NFL season?
So I agree with everything you said. I mean, obviously the playoffs never goes well. Which someone who is there at the facility every single day and seeing them practice, seeing them working out, and then going to the games always blows my mind. And especially because 2023 was the season where I thought if anything was possible, it was possible last year, because they were so good on paper and they were so good in everything that they were doing. I mean, we had a good record. We were winning games. We entered the playoffs on a high. So I'm thinking, I didn't go to the stadium that day and expecting to be the last time I was going to be in the stadium for the year or possibly ever, because you never know at the end of the season what's going to happen if you're going to, move up or move teams or whatever. So I'm like, none of us were mentally prepared. None of the media was mentally prepared for that. And I think for the 2024 season, they're going to have to live up to how good they were in 2023, but also have to hold that chip on their shoulder that they let it all go to, like you said, a Green Bay Packers team that was supposed to be rebuilding. And then they came in, at home in Dallas and destroyed them on their own turf, which is just embarrassing in a sense. So I think with everyone getting paid, I think that it shows that Jerry Jones respects them enough and believes in them enough to pay them. So I think it's now in the players' hands to get the job done. I think we're still early in the season. Obviously, we've only played 2 games. I think we saw 2 very different teams, the first game and the second game. It was not what the first game, I was very impressed with our defense. I was very impressed with how our pass rush. I mean, I'm like a defensive queen. I love talking about defense. I don't know why I like talking about it over offense, and that's how I was when I played sports, like personally. I love our pass rush. I love talking about it. Our secondary is great. We played so well, and I was so proud of our defense for how they played against Cleveland. And then it was like a completely different story week 2. And that was just something I was not prepared for. Unfortunately, they did not play well at all. And it was kind of like they flipped. It was like the defense played amazing the first game. Loved everything that I saw from everybody. Offense, they were way more versatile than I think they were last year. Because last year, all the snaps went to CeeDee. I mean, pretty much the offense was relying on CeeDee. And so I think the first game, it's like, okay, they're throwing to Jake Ferguson. They're throwing to Brandon Cooks. They're going to let the run game take it a little bit. It's like, okay, so the offense has diversified and they're more open to not just throwing it to CeeDee, which is good because he's being double covered almost every time. Then the second game, I'm like, okay, the offense is doing great. They're doing so much better. And the defense, like, I don't know if the security just didn't let them in the building that day or what happened, but they weren't there. So that was an interesting one for me to watch. It was not what I was expecting. It wasn't what I thought my story was going to be about. It wasn't what I thought I was going to have to talk about after on TV. It completely blew my mind. So I'm like, that is not the defense that we all know and love.
Yeah, and this the thing about that. It was just two different teams, like you said, week 1 and week 2.
And I think that's the problem. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I think, quickly, that's a big problem when we go into the playoffs. I think they play like a completely different team than what they have played all season. And I think the problem is, it's not the Cowboys are good or the Cowboys are bad. I think they're just a very, very hot and cold team at the moment. And I don't know if that's because it's early and they have to find who they are as a team. But right now, like you said, it's just two very different teams from week 1 and week 2.
Yeah, week 1, it was just like they were the team that many people expect to win the NFC East division. And then week 2, it's like, okay, not the same thing.
And I don't know how much the players watch or read the media. I don't. And I don't know if that gets to them. I don't know if that gets in their head and they feel, like empowered that they did so well. And like, okay, everyone's talking so good about us. And then that kind of gets to their head and they don't play well. I don't know how that works, but I had multiple, I do superstars from each week from the game, and every single superstar I had from week 1 was on defense. I talked about the defense all day. It was great. And then the next week, it was nobody on defense because it was non-existent.
Yes. So it's like week 1, we're just gonna flip right into it. We're just gonna go right into it, then Dex extension. Okay. So week 1, it's like you dominated. I mean, thank you from a fellow Steelers fan. I'm telling you, thank you for that. For shutting Brown fans up for at least a week. But then week 2, home opener versus the Saints, whole different ball game. It's like Alvin Kamara had 4 touchdowns. I thought they would at least had a plan for that. Then you had, Derek Carr just dancing in the end zone. Then it was at one point where you tied the game or you got them back. They come back, they march down the field again, and it's just been straight downhill for the Cowboys. So yeah. I think what it really is. It's just, you say they're a hot and cold team, which is definitely true, which makes them, inconsistent. And I think that is what's causing the Cowboys to not be able to get back to the promised land, because they have not been since since I was born. The last time they've been was 95. And that's a pretty long time. That's over 20 years. No conference championship, no Super Bowl title. You have all this talent. But then flip the script to week 1. Like I said, you dominated. You neutralized Deshaun Watson. You neutralized Nick Chubb. You neutralized Amari Cooper, which is easier said than done. And even as a Steelers fan, when it comes to the likes of Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper, that will forever be easier said than done. Because these guys are no joke, especially Nick Chubb, who I think is the heart and the soul of that offense. And I said it before, and I'll say it again: that offense is only going to go as far as Chubb allow it. Mm-hmm. Or Chubb's game would allow it. But obviously, you're going to have to find more answers than that, which is why I don't overlook David Njoku, and I definitely would not overlook Amari Cooper with the caliber players they are. You found the way to neutralize every last one of them who have played. I'm not sure if Njoku played that game or not, or he might have did and got injured. I really didn't read into that. Then week 2, it was just a whole nother ball game. I was like, whoa, what the hell am I watching?
Everyone was just so confused. And I think that
everyone but Stephen A.
Amen. And to me, it's like it's inconsistency. So this is not the NBA. You have 17 games to prove that you can make it to the playoffs or not. That's not a lot of time. It's not a lot of opportunities. I mean, Micah Parsons talked about it at training camp. We talked to him about that. He said, you only have 17 opportunities to show yourself and be the best player that you can be and to show that you are the best in the world. That's not a lot of time, and that's not a lot of games. It's 17 days out of 365. And he emphasized that in training camp, that's not a lot of time, it's not a lot of chances, and every single opportunity you have to go out there and play your heart out. And he talked about that during training camp. And I think the issue right now is the inconsistency. And it's not an inconsistency of this. It's this. Like it's so volatile. And again, we're only 2 weeks in, so we'll see. But for a home opener, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, listen, I feel your pain. The last time the Steelers had a home opener, we got embarrassed by San Francisco. So trust me, I feel your pain on that one. And I know and this was just right after you paid CeeDee Lamb, right after you paid Dak Prescott, who threw a touchdown to CeeDee Lamb, which was a beautiful, beautiful throw that practically brought you back into the game. And I just think what it is, even though people say Dak could have played better, which you can definitely argue, but I think the moral of the story is that your defense just collapsed.
They gave up 42 points, 44 points, like
4 touchdowns to one player. That's 28 points.
Four touchdowns to one player. And I've been covering the Cowboys for now 3 years, and I think we've talked about the run defense every single year, and that it's a problem every single year. I think fans, it's an easy out for the fans to blame it on Dak Prescott. And at the end of the day, they gave up 44 points. So at the end of the day, I think it's an easy cop out to blame your quarterback. He's the face of the franchise. The offense had a better game than they did the previous week, so they improved. The defense went from giving up 17 points to 44 points. The most points they've given up at a home game, and I can't even tell you how long. There was a stat on that on Twitter. I can't remember how many years it's been, but the Cowboys haven't given up 44 points in a very, very long time, and it's because of the defense that they have. I mean, they're one of the best defenses in the NFL, and you come out and play like that against your home opener, you give up 4 touchdowns to the same player, and give up a touchdown on every single drive except for one.
Where I think it was a field goal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that one Well, I think on every single possession the Saints had, they scored. On every drive down except for one they kicked. It was like on a 3rd and 10 and they missed it, and then they had to punt on one occasion, and that's unacceptable. You're having Derek Carr throw to people wide open in the end zone. We don't even have to talk about the run defense. Let's take the run defense completely out of it, and say that Alvin Kamara didn't score 4 touchdowns. Okay, you still have Derek Carr throwing it to wide open wide receivers in the end zone with no secondary to be found. Where are you at? You got burned every single play by every single player on that team.
They got smoked.
It was insane. It was nothing that I had prepared for, nothing I had expected. I'm watching ESPN. I'm watching what the bettors are saying they're doing on ESPN, like the sports betting or whatever. No one would have ever predicted that, ever. The predictions had Cowboys winning the game, and we did not only lose the game, but we lost by double-digit numbers.
Yeah. No one can fault you for being upset. No one can fault Cowboy fans for being upset. And, I'm not going to lie. Watching that game, even though I was embarrassed and I'm not even a Cowboys fan, so I can only imagine how a Cowboys fan feel. But the first thing that came to my mind, honestly, when I saw that is this going to be the defense we're really going to see against good teams all year? Or is this just a bad day? I'm hoping that this is just a bad day because the playoffs are going to feel weird. Say what you want about the Cowboys, but their presence still means something in this country, in the world of sports.
Yep.
So it's just certain franchises. Yeah. It's just certain franchises that you just cannot be without in the postseason. I think the Steelers is 1, and I'm going to be a little biased here because I'm a Steelers fan. The Cowboys is 2. The 49ers are 3. And it's getting a little odd not seeing the Patriots there. Because it's just, when you think of the sport of football and you think of the NFL, those are the teams that come to your mind outside of the Chiefs. Like, you think of these gold standard organizations, and then you flip back to the game. I said, Lord, Stephen A is about to have himself a ball, because
I literally tweeted it, I think, at the end of the third quarter, and I said I can't even wait to see what Stephen A is going to have to say about this. Lord knows he's going to have something to say about it. And I do think it was an off game. Just from everything I've seen, the players I've spoken to, and all the off-season training, the training camp, everything that I've seen shows it was an off day. And speaking, to certain players that I've spoken to, I will not name names, but typically they don't do well during earlier games, because the Cowboys don't normally play noon games, because a lot of people watch their games. So, a lot of the times they're on at 3:30 or they're on prime time, because people want to watch the Cowboys. It's America's team. So from what I gathered from some of them is some of them don't do well playing so early in the morning, because they're just not used to playing that early when they play for America's team.
Yep. Yeah. It's just
not that that's saying that's an excuse to how they played, but from what I was told,
keep them prime.
That's what I got. So I mean, I don't know if because they had to wake up at 7:00 in the morning, that they didn't like that or what. But I mean, it's a home opener. It's at noon. Like I said, they almost never play at noon, so it's something they're not used to. And I mean, everything can affect how a player plays. The weather. I mean, you have Miami Dolphins go and play in Minnesota. They might lose because it's so freaking cold. Like, everything affects how a player is going to play. The time of day, the weather, where they're located. If they're in Denver and they can't breathe, like, a lot of things, affect a player's ability to play football. And I think the fans don't really think of it in that way. But, noon is early for them. Usually they don't play that early. So that was some of their responses is that it was an early game.
Yeah, and adjusting to time, it can be a real hard thing. Yeah. It goes back to what I said about stopping some of the Browns players. It's always going to be easier said than done. And you can be used to waking up at like 12 o'clock and headed to the stadium about 1 because your game is at 4:25. Then just to happen to be somewhere at 7 because an event is at 1 and you got to be there extra early. Yep. And then
I'm the same way. I hate noon games, because that means I have to be at the stadium at like 9 a.m. and I'm not a morning person. So to me, I already know how I am. I'm like, I got to get to the stadium at like 8 or 9 a.m. Like, I live an hour away from the stadium. I got to be camera ready when I get there. Like, that's a very early morning for me. Then the 3:30 p.m. games that we don't have to be there until like noon 1. That's a totally different ball game. So it's the same thing.
Right. And when you're doing your work and you're reporting, it's like you're used to waking up at that time, not holding a mic at that time and interviewing players. So it's hard to adjust sometimes, and that's the thing. So before we even get to week 3, let's flip it back here real quick.
Yep.
So obviously he didn't, he played well week 1. He kept the pace a little week 2. Like we already anticipated, or like we already stated, the results did not come the way that they expected it week 2. So, but we know why Dak got this contract extension, because the prospects in this upcoming class and others are just, at least the upcoming 2, in my opinion, are not that great. So when you have a guy that you can at least get to the dance with, you're going to have to keep him until you can find something better, which is why I think they gave him this contract extension. So when Dak got that extension, after rumors was, swirling around, spreading around that he was not, this was his last year in Dallas, et cetera, what was your overall reaction when his contract deal officially was, bona fide and certified, to be more correct, and everyone just had to play a game and shut up?
Yep. So it was actually funny, because I got notified on my way to church on Sunday right before the game. So it was actually right before the first game of the season, And I was like, it's going to be a calm, cool morning. I don't know why everything is going to be a calm, cool morning on Cowboys game day. That was very a naive thought. But I was like, the game is not that early. I'm going to go to church, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to get everything set up and get ready for the game because I don't travel. So I was not in Cleveland. And I'm literally about to walk out the door, and my phone starts going crazy. And I'm like, good Lord, what happened? I put my phone down for 5 minutes. What happened? So obviously I see the contract, 4 years, $240 million. I mean, he's getting Steph Curry money at this point. I mean, that's $60 million a year. NBA players are getting paid crazy because, they play so many freaking games. So, I mean, he's up there. I think he's the highest paid NFL player in history now at this point. I think Jerry did that to set a precedence, because why would Jerry Jones not do that? I mean, that's just Jerry Jones. And then also to do it right before the first game of the season, I think Jerry did that on purpose as well. Jerry loves to make a splash. Like, we all know, Jerry is not boring. And, we talked in the locker room, in the facility, with Dak for weeks before it actually happened. And his whole thing was, look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't play for the money. I play because I love what I do. And I think his actions show that. His leadership shows that. I mean, I don't know anyone in that locker room that's more of a leader than he is naturally to his team. And he's like, I'm not here for the money. Like, I mean, everyone's there to get paid. It's a job, don't get me wrong. But he made it very clear before that was ever brought to light that that's not going to affect, my play. And then when it finally happened, unfortunately, we didn't get to speak to him until they got back home from the Cleveland game, and it was the same thing as it was before. He was obviously happy, and he was excited, and it was the same goal, but it was the same goal before as it was after. It was, we need to make it to the playoffs, and we need to win a Super Bowl. We don't care about anything else. And so that's really what was stated after the whole contract. But I do think, as a human being and as a person, that he's very deserving.
Yeah, and that's the type of leadership you want in the locker room. Exactly. You don't want guys that just only care for the money, because as soon as they get their money, they don't play well.
Correct. And I think a lot of the fans don't understand that either. It's like, you're not only looking for someone who can throw touchdowns and win games. Of course, I mean, that what's understood doesn't need to be explained. I mean, Dak knows his job at the end of the day. But I think Jerry sees value in the leadership that he brings to the team, which is why he got paid that number.
Yep. And, I'm going to say what others won't say. It was well-deserved.
Amen.
I mean, it was well-deserved. I mean, what else was you going to do? You can't go anywhere else because, like we said, the free agency class next year ain't looking that great. And then you got the NFL, draft. The next two classes in the quarterback position ain't looking that great. It's not the position. If anything, you'll be looking at wide receiver or safety or cornerback or any other position but the quarterback. And so, translation before we move on, it's congrats, Dak, on your new deal. Good luck to the Cowboys this year. And speaking of this year, you're currently sitting at 1-1. So, obviously, great win in Cleveland, bad loss at home in Dallas. Sitting at 1-1, where do you go from here with the Ravens up next?
Okay, so this one, I'm a blunt person because I'm from the North, even though I live in Dallas. I'm from the North, and I say what I mean, and I think this one's gonna be tough. I don't think any game's gonna be easy. This is the NFL at the end of the day. But the Ravens are 0-2, and they are desperate for a win. So you have that. That's a whole aspect in itself. I mean, they're coming off of a loss to the Raiders. They clearly had a bad week as well. I guess the Cowboys weren't the only ones that had a bad week. They're coming off a loss to the Raiders. They need a win desperately, and Lamar Jackson is one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. I watched him play in college. One of my best friends went to his college, so I saw him play a lot. They have a beast with Derrick Henry at the running back, and clearly the Cowboys struggle in the run D. So you already have run defense issues. We saw that already. And then now you're going to face Derrick Henry, who is coming off of 18 carries, 84 yards, and 1 touchdown. I mean, that's a great game. You have Zay Flowers, wide receiver, also great as well. So I don't think they're going to lay down easy by all means. Do I think that the Cowboys aren't going to lie down easy either? Absolutely not. I think it's going to be a great game. I think the Ravens are desperate for a win though, and I think the Cowboys are going to have to really put their heads together for this one.
Yeah, agree. I think, John Harbaugh team, it'll be real hard to see them go 0-3. But you're the Cowboys, you want to bounce back from the embarrassing loss
exactly.
at home.
I think that's what's going on. I think you have the Ravens who are desperate for a win, and then you have the Cowboys who are desperate for a comeback win because they just got embarrassed at home in their home opener out of nowhere. So I think both teams are desperate to look good for their fans and to pull out a win for their fans.
Right, and I definitely agree. So I think that game, I'm going to just shut up about that game when it comes to predictions, because I think that's the one game this week that can go either way, and you're just going to have to flip a coin on that and pray for the best.
I mean, I think that game's going to go drive for drive. I mean, I'm going to watch that game so intently. I'm so excited for it, but that's going to be a very, very good game.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great test for the Cowboys defense, because obviously their run defense been taking a lot of criticism this week. So I think that Derrick Henry with that new, revamped Ravens offensive line can definitely be a great test, a great challenge. So the real question is the Cowboys going to come up big, or are they going to come up short and lose again for the second week straight? That's still to be determined. Or is the Ravens going to finally snap their losing streak and get in the win column, or they're going to fall to 0-3 for the first time under John Harbaugh? That remains to be seen. So I just wish both teams the best of luck that game.
Amen. I agree.
All right, Brittany, that's all I have for you. Once again,
it? Okay.
You. Yeah, it's just that quick.
Cool.
But yes, that's all
it's always
I
quick
have.
when you're talking football.
Yeah, it definitely goes quick. All right, so that's all I'd have for you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not, please follow Brittany on Instagram and on X at Brittany Bowen. That is your username, right?
Yes, so Instagram's going to be _Brittany Bowen _ and X is Britt Bratt, but I think you can find it on my Twitter or on my Instagram, so everything's all right there.
Yep, everything's all right there. And if you have not already, please follow D210 Sports for more coverage from Brittany's and many others, as they will cover your fellow teams in Dallas, including your fellow Dallas Cowboys. Once again, this is your host, SHAE, signing out, and this has been the SHAE Max Show.
Get ready, let's go! Gotta go home! 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 They can't stop you. No, they can't stop you. No, they can't stop